E, Molly, Rollin, Skittles, candy, love drug, happy pill, Scooby snacks. What they are. Think ecstasy, MDMA, and MDA are all the same thing? Well, they're not. Also categorized as stimulants, they're distinctly different from other stimulants like cocaine, meth, or Adderall. Empathogens stimulate feelings of empathy, and entactogens stimulate feelings of introspection and heightened sensitivity to touch, tactile. These drugs qualify as stimulants because of the amphetamine core of their molecular structure. However, while an amphetamine works primarily on norepinephrine, empathogens work mainly on serotonin and dopamine respectively. In other words, they produce extremely high volumes of serotonin, fairly high levels of dopamine, and high norepinephrine. The results look like this. Extremely high serotonin is hyper-intense feelings of happiness, joy and intimacy with other people. Fairly high dopamine means intense feelings of peace, inner power, insight, and lowered inhibitions. High norepinephrine, feelings of adrenaline, energy, and alertness. We will examine all three of the popular drugs of this class separately since they have varying effects. The core or base of these empathogens is MDA. As you can see in its name, the molecule of amphetamine is in its structure, while MDMA clearly has methamphetamine in its chemical makeup. Methamphetamine is a much more potent stimulant than regular amphetamine, so MDMA is more speedy than MDA. Then there's ecstasy, the low man on the totem pole. Ecstasy is MDMA cut with other adulterants, typically more crude meth or crude amphetamines. Therefore, the hierarchy of quality is MDA at the top, the best, MDA in the middle, very good, and ecstasy at the very bottom, all right. Each of these drugs is equal in empathogen and entactogen quality. However, the empathogen quality is overshadowed and dominated by the quantity and presence of amphetamine or methamphetamine, fight or flight feelings. Ecstasy is a diluted version of MDMA. It can be cut with almost any type of white powder, including cocaine or even talcum powder. Low budget, low quality dealers will cut with talc or other innocuous powders. Decent dealers typically cut with meth or other amphetamines since it will fold neatly into the high. Since X users like to stay up and dance all night at raves, the logical choice of adding more amphetamines to increase profit is made. Ecstasy typically comes in a pill form. This makes it easy to use and distribute. Pure MDA and MDMA cannot bind chemically into a pill form, so if anyone ever tells you you're getting pure MDMA or MDA in a pill form, they're lying to you. Ecstasy is cheaper than the others, typically $8 to $12 a pill. Due to the high amount of amphetamine in them, only 1 or 2 pills might be needed for a long night out, but most people are taking 3 to 5, one every hour or so to get through a night of music and dancing. It is nearly impossible for your average roller to know what he or she is getting when buying E. It is impossible to know what percentage of the drug is MDA or MDMA, amphetamines, methamphetamine, or other adulterants. While Adderall is a common additive, some are cut with heroin to create more euphoria. Most kids are simply buying from a friend and paying cheap prices and are therefore very vulnerable to unclean drugs. I'm not saying the cuts are always dangerous. I'm simply pointing out that from a safety and consumer point of view, buying E comes with little confidence about purity. Once a pill is ingested, it typically takes 20 to 40 minutes to take effect. It has a mild onset and is rather gradual. For the best results, one is ingested, and once it begins to take effect, you take a second, which stacks them. 20 minutes later, the second one rolls onto the first one, and this onset is felt quite dramatically. If another is taken every hour or so, the roll is sustained with an additional rush of the empathogen feelings at the onset of each new dose. Once you feel the warm fuzzies begin to subside, it's time for another dose. While the amphetamine high is prominent, it is initially overshadowed by the empathogen and entactogen quality of the drug's MDA core. Feelings of empathy, connectedness, joy, peace, and well-being are dominant. It also comes with a heightened sensory input. Hearing and vision are heightened and clearer, making lights brighter and more attractive, and music more textured and intense. The sense of touch is heightened, making touching and being touched more pleasurable and pronounced. This makes it a body high. Your body feels different, unusual, and pleasurable with everything it comes into contact with from the 5 senses, including smells and tastes. There is a nervous energy to ecstasy, as the amphetamine stimulates adrenaline and noradrenaline. This component helps add to the desire to dance and be active, which is why it is so common at raves. Raves are large parties where techno music and light shows are provided. The amphetamine features make the drug inexpensive and last a long time, which is very appealing to teens and tweens with limited funds who want to stay up all night. Ecstasy is best enjoyed in a social setting with pumping music and physical movement. This atmosphere aligns well with the amphetamine feature of the drug, making the speedy feeling less noticeable as you dance and socialize. In that sense, you welcome the additional energy and alertness while still experiencing the sensations of increased serotonin and dopamine pleasure feelings. Due to the wide use of it at raves and clubs, it is easy for people to get either hyperhydrated or dehydrated. Hyperhydration or water poisoning is when drinking too much water offsets normal electrolyte balances in the brain. Due to the exertion of dancing and the overstimulation of the drug, combined with the myth that one should disproportionately drink amounts of water during a roll, many people overhydrate and some have died from this. It is also common for people to experience medical trauma or even death due to dehydration. By overexertion and not drinking enough, electrolyte levels are disrupted. It is important to achieve a normal balance of hydration if using these drugs. It doesn't take a genius to know what to do, and I'm truly sorry if I offend anyone who has lost someone due to one of these scenarios. Only those who are reckless and careless get themselves into these situations. If you are going to experiment with drugs, it takes an intellectual approach and planning. As mentioned many times throughout this text, I do not condone or encourage drug use, but if you must do it, this book can at least help you do it safely. Be smart, plan, and pay attention. I recently saw a film on ecstasy users, and it profiled a group of do-gooders who go out to the raves simply to look out for kids on E. They scan for anyone showing signs of risk and approach them to advise, hydrate, and give them a place to rest or get themselves together if they seem like they might be overloading. They don't judge or preach. In fact, many of the group's members also roll from time to time. By not being judgmental, this group has probably saved a lot of lives, as ravers trust them and will even seek them out when feeling overwhelmed. If you're going to roll and go to a rave, use your head. Eat a good high-protein meal early in the evening, allowing it sufficient time to digest. Take some vitamin supplements, especially B complexes. Hydrate throughout the day before you go out and drink water accordingly as you feel the need. Look after one another. Sometimes you can see if your friend's tripping and vice versa better than you can see it in yourself. Be aware, be mature, and you'll probably get away with having fun and being safe. Rough. Once the empathogen portion of the drug wears off, you're left with an atypical amphetamine comedown, depression, anxiety, sleeplessness, and a strong craving for the drug or any remedy for your dopamine and serotonin deprivation. It typically passes within a few hours, and many users are so exhausted from dancing they can crash and skip through it. Even though the comedown only lasts a few hours, each minute feels like 20. Time creeps by as you wait for the feelings of depression, anxiety, and hopelessness to subside. Depending on the amount of amphetamine in the drug, the depression and anxiety will be proportionate to the deprivation of dopamine and serotonin you're going through. I have had E in a pill form with little to no comedown. On 2 occasions, I took a 100 milligram tablet, and once it kicked in, I took another 100 milligrams. This is an average dose for someone of my size and experience. I rolled for about 2.5 hours and drank almost 6 beers with it over time, hanging out with a girlfriend who was clean and sober. When it began to wear off, we had sex and I went to sleep fairly easily. While the comedown was very mild, it's important to point out that the high was fairly mild too. Had I taken a total of 400 milligrams, the outcome would have been quite different. My first roll was fortunate. I got a clean drug. I've had other doses that are fun while high but not worth the comedown. In other words, no experience is identical. The variable degree of the unpleasant comedown should be considered and factored in because every ecstasy roll will vary. Some better with less meth, some worse with more. The variable degree of the unpleasant comedown should be considered and factored in because every ecstasy roll will vary. Some better with less meth, some worse with more meth. The next day you will feel tired and listless and melancholy, yet strangely peaceful in your exhaustion. If you dance the night away, you will be sore and tired as well. Your jaw can hurt from smiling so much and from the hours of bruxism, teeth grinding, that you probably didn't even know you were doing. Within a day, you may feel as though you've fully recovered, but in fact, you haven't yet. Your brain needs time to repair the dopamine and serotonin receptors that were overstimulated and damaged by the drug. Feelings of melancholy and fatigue are there, no matter how much you want to believe you are back to normal. It typically takes a week to get a dose out of your system. Obviously, the more you do and the more frequently you do it, the longer that takes. Again, I'm not recommending using these drugs, but if you insist, a good rule of thumb is to keep your experimentation to a few times in your life, less than 10 and 40 to 60 days apart, to allow physiological recovery to take place before you add more damage to your brain and body. There's pretty good data that suggests there are indeed long-term negative effects of this drug to serotonin receptors that could affect long-term mood, memory, and attention. By following the suggestion of spacing out uses and limiting the total times of usage, it is possible that the neurotransmitter receptors could recover fully and no noticeable long-term effects would take place. Yeah, overall, I do not feel ecstasy is worth it. The high is mild compared to the adverse effects. In order to truly get off on it, you have to take a lot and then suffer a proportionally challenging come down. 4 hours of rolling will cause 4 hours of come down. When you're high, you'll swear it will be worth it. When coming down, you will swear it wasn't worth it. The high is good and it is revealing and very pleasurable. The revealing part is the empathy and intimate feelings toward others because they seem to be reminders of how we could and should feel toward others and ourselves all the time. The feelings of empathy linger, not like a hangover does, but as a mentality. It is as though you've learned you are capable of this and it sticks with you for a while. Not the actual empathy feeling, but the awareness that it is an accessible and possible mentality. Overall, if someone is determined to roll, my recommendation is to save your money up and get a purer form of either MDMA or MDA. E is not worth the cheap price. Take your time, save your money up and get something worth doing. Or better and smarter yet, skip it altogether. MDMA is purer than ecstasy. It has a higher concentration of MDA in it, a purer form of meth in it, and it is far less cut as well, so it's more potent in all areas. The empathogen and tactogen qualities are far more intense, making it more hypersensual and quasi-psychedelic. MDMA acts on the receptors of dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine more selectively, more on the dopamine and serotonin and less on the speedy norepinephrine. The equation is simple: more bang for your buck, more pleasure and less negative come-down feelings. Sounds like a dream come true, right? However, MDMA has high concentrations of methamphetamine. Compared to E, it is richer in its pleasure and deeper in its sensuality, but the come-down of a Molly is worse than an E-roll due to the higher content of methamphetamine. You play, you pay in equal proportions. MDMA comes in a crystalline form since it cannot bind itself into a pill. However, since MDA, MDMA, and meth, and even drain cleaner all look alike, you cannot tell them through appearance how pure your Molly is. In other words, what the ratio of MDA to meth actually is will be unknown to the user until you take it. Sellers of Molly are hip to the fact that most users are aware that true Molly cannot be in a pill form. They simply package their product in a crystalline form to sell the idea that it is not E. You won't know how much of what you've got until you do it, and mostly until you come down from it. Unless you have a Regent testing kit in your possession, about 20 bucks online, you can't know what your Molly is made of or how much. Most E and Molly users are not sophisticated enough in their using experience to tell the difference between good drugs and bad ones, primarily because they never really get good pure drugs. Their point of reference is incomplete, and so they're easily to fool. Typically 75 to 150 milligrams MDMA is used at each dose. It can be snorted, licked, drunk, or swallowed. If crushed, it can be snorted. The onset is quick this way, but it wears off fast and snorting is painful. If it's licked from your finger, the onset is slow and it tastes like crap, like a burned plastic chemical. But you can easily monitor how you're feeling and adjust your roll accordingly. To drink it, the powder is simply dumped into water and consumed. Onset is slow and the roll can be a surprise if you're not used to it. Swallowing it in a capsule or parachuting is the most common method. The crystalline substance is deposited into an empty capsule or wrapped in a small wad of tissue or toilet paper and then swallowed like a pill. Onset is average and you won't know what you're getting until it kicks in. This surprise can be fun, but there's no turning back if it's too strong. As with E, a small or moderate dose is taken and a wait time for onset is allowed before another dose is taken, adjusting the amount based on what you're feeling from the first dose. Doses are taken every 1 to 2 hours to refresh the roll. When I took Molly, I found that my tolerance built up quickly, with each dose affecting me less powerfully than the last, until my last dose, which I went for broke, taking about 300 milligrams all at once, rolling hard and wild for 30 to 40 minutes before it began to wear off. Once it begins to wear off, it wears off fast. You're really high on the roll, but once it begins to wane, it rapidly does so in the span of 15 to 20 minutes. That doesn't mean it leaves you stone cold sober in 20 to 30 minutes, simply that the rolling feeling is gone. You're left with a mild, peaceful version of the high. Another 20 to 40 minutes and you're down from the high. However, the meth-induced norepinephrine stimulation is still going strong. Anxiety, tension, bruxism, and feelings of despair set in, and there's nowhere to go away to get away from them, and you have to wait it out, minute by agonizing minute. Now we get to the real deal. MDA is the empathogen in this group with the least amount of amphetamine and the highest, purest concentration of the quasi-psychedelic content of the molecule. I use the term quasi-psychedelic in these empathogens. They are not psychedelic enough to classify them as such, but they do have psychedelic qualities triggering introspection, conceptual thinking, and perceptions. They enhance tactile senses. The sense of touch and the ability to actually experience an awareness of your own body in a highly sensual way is very interesting and intriguing. However, as a purist, when it comes to psychedelics, these empathogens do not yield the insights and paradigm-shifting mentalities I associate with true psychedelic experience. It is quasi-psychedelic because it creates a mild synesthesia. There are no hallucinations with empathogens, and anyone who tells you otherwise is telling you a tall tale or might be mildly psychotic. The MDA empathogen experience is more pleasure, whereas the psychedelic experience has profundity and feelings of fulfillment and confusion. Remember that pleasure is a good time, it is temporary, and fulfillment is something that changes you and adds character or a depth to you as an entity. Empathogens are a good time and have some quasi-psychedelic features, but do not change you. There are no lasting profound insights. The only potential insight would be the sense of empathy and connection to others. And it is this experience that can expose us to the suspicion that feelings of empathy are available to us organically if we only access them. MDA is the most quasi-psychedelic of the three drugs we've discussed. The utter lack of quantity and potency of the amphetamine component of this empathogen version makes it completely distinctive from the other two. When most rollers get an opportunity to try real MDA for the first time, they are blown away, finally experiencing the full potential of true and pure empathogen. A pure high dose of MDA is so subtle that the lack of intensity is often misleading. Many people wonder if it is actually working, not because they feel nothing, but because the feelings are so subtle they can be accepted as organic and not drug-induced. To some, this lack of intensity is a deterrent because they want something powerful. To others, it is a favorable quality since it is paradoxically gentle and powerful. Real MDA is rare and hard to get. I would think the only people getting it are within 4 degrees of separation from someone who actually makes it. In other words, someone makes it and then you need to know a friend of a friend of a friend who knows that person directly. Beyond the 4th degree, it is being cut by some percentage and sold. I've read forums and the air would experience fall, and there is no doubt that most people out there describing their MDA or moonrock experience were told they were getting MDA but got good Molly instead. MDA is very slow to take effect, taking about 1 hour to 1 hour and a quarter to feel its onset. However, once it begins, the initial 15 minutes may be subtle, but the next 30 are quite a ride. A slow, subtle, but undeniable rush through your body, mind, and brain begins to roll like a cascading wave. Think of it like a waterfall that goes up. The onset is smooth, not necessarily gradual, but it is easy to enjoy. And while it is overwhelming, it is not overwhelming in a bad way. It is overwhelming in the sense that it is more than you can describe or label, as this wave of pleasure escalates for half an hour or so. You can walk, talk, and function, but mostly you just enjoy. A smile is impossible to resist, and you definitely want others to feel like you're feeling. The rush of this onset doesn't really dissipate or stop. You stay just as high even after this peaking, and you adjust to the altitude. You don't come down from the rush, you plateau onto it. For several hours, this plateau feeling lasts. Smooth and clean, there is none of the edgy, wiry feeling of amphetamine whatsoever. It is so relaxing and calming, it is easy to almost want to sleep and dream while on it. There is a subtle reality distortion, qualifying it as a quasi-psychedelic, and you are now on a frequency of reality others only wish they could be on. It is special, like having a little happy secret. Music is a must because MDA enhances your sensitivity to it. There is no need to run out and dance, but you certainly could. It is much more laid back than E or Molly, allowing you to choose, relax and stay in and chat deeply about simple, beautiful things, or go out and mix it up socially. MDA has legs and will typically plateau for several hours, coming in waves. While you are consistently high while on it and feeling pleasurable, you will experience waves of ecstasy that come over the top of your head and fill you up with an inner warmth. It recedes much like an ocean wave and then returns, giving you more rushes of the high. It's interesting that the receding part is not really even noticed until it waves over you again. Only then do you realize it had momentarily backed off, only to come back and give you more pleasure like a gift. These waves or rolling sensations take place steadily, consistently, and constantly. Typically, it is stacked in doses, and you take more 2 to 3 hours in. 2 to 3 dosings will make for a 2 to 6 hour experience. The long and short of it, it feels great and it is a smooth and pure high with no edgy, anxious, or confusing qualities to it. It is simple and easy to use and enjoy. The MDA comedown, none to mild. Seriously, the nearly insignificant amount of amphetamine makes its wearing off like coming in for a smooth landing. You glide back down slowly, returning to normal, feeling peaceful and satisfied. There is nearly no depression or anxiety, and for most people, it is easy to sleep after its use. There can be slight sadness in realizing the special good time you are having is winding down, but it is not rough at all. There is a mild over-alertness residual from the extra norepinephrine in your body. This is not to be confused with sleeplessness and feeling edgy, as it has none of these qualities. The body will feel a little tired, and there is often a lack of genital sensitivity, making sex a little difficult. Erectile dysfunction and difficulty achieving orgasm or climax for both sexes usually occur. It is probably better to cuddle than trying for intimacy because the norepinephrine can adversely affect sexual performance and intimacy. A very low dose of a sleep medication or benzo like Xanax will usually neutralize any extra alertness and allow sleep to occur. Landing gear. It is difficult not to advocate the use of this drug. I found it to be highly therapeutic. My life is stressful and filled with deadlines, responsibilities, and a never-ending sense of needing to accomplish things, and has disproportionate and infrequent enjoyable times. I am not the only one caught in a perpetual cycle of stress due to trying to succeed and make a comfortable life for me and my family. I understand and accept stress as a part of life and do not feel depressed or angry on a large scale due to the enormous pressures of life. I choose to be an overachiever, and I understand the consequences of succeeding and creating. The best therapy for me typically is time off to relax and recharge. However, between the stress of costs and planning for time off, leisure is challenging. It can take a day or two just to get into a relaxed state of mind and body when I actually do take time off. Experimenting with MDA was a surprise for me. The one time I experimented with it, I had a wonderful evening and was able to relax more than I can on my own, to be sure. The high was clean and pure and smooth, and nothing but pleasant and fun. I could not say one thing bad about the experience while on it. The rush was fantastic and wonderful, the plateau was long and comfortable, and the come down was easy and soft. The following day, I felt more relaxed and peaceful than I had in months or even years. I felt peaceful and patient, and in this way, it was very therapeutic. We all need to truly and deeply relax for a few days at a time and get the most out of that relaxing. MDA assured this. Spending one evening on MDA was equivalent to having a week off from work. Afterward, I felt content, satisfied, calm, and relaxed, feelings not usually accessible to me. I cannot say at this time if there is a role for MDA as a medicine. It is far less damaging and has far more positive of an effect than many prescribed medications that I see in use today, like Prozac for anxiety and depression and Xanax for stress. I am not a proponent of these or most prescribed meds. I am fortunate that I am capable of coping with the less than favorable features of life. Other than my addictive disorder, which is in remission, I am mentally and emotionally healthy and stable. On one hand, I can see myself taking a dose of it a couple times a year to enjoy and relax. On the other hand, I spiritually believe in a chemical-free lifestyle if possible. I am not crazy. If I'm in pain, I will take a drug, and if I had schizophrenia, I would take many. However, if there's nothing wrong with me, I will not take anything. We all need coping mechanisms, and everything from a glass of wine to sex to a vacation or indulgences in unhealthy food from time to time can keep us going in life if we are blessed enough to have the resources and opportunity to do so. Comedian Chris Rock once said, "The government doesn't want you to use your drugs, they want you to use their drugs." I have no use for the ongoing, consistent daily use of chemicals to deal with my stress or other life symptoms. Drugs are toxic and dangerous and far too easily recommended and prescribed in today's culture. It certainly seems arbitrary how government advocates one set of drugs, many of which are advertised on TV with frightening disclaimers of listed side effects, yet they outlaw something like MDA. You can drink legally and there is no limitation on how much you can buy or consume and little to no regulation to it, even in public. Yet the government feels the need to control and prohibit something as harmless as some of these empathogens. Empathogens have been successfully used in psychiatric forms of therapy. The rolling experience is one of reduced or even eliminated stress or anxiety combined with feelings of harmony, empathy, insight, and immense clarity of spirit and emotion. When a therapist provides guidance and therapy during the episode and proper review is followed afterward, powerful realizations can occur, and these realizations can liberate that subject from the emotional or psychological issues binding them. The psychedelic and quasi-psychedelic experience can be quasi-enlightening to many people. Empathogens have much of the favorable sensations of psychedelic experiences without the intensity or confusing features that often accompany them. I am not endorsing or encouraging any drugs to be used as therapy, as I am more of a purist, believing that humans are better off facing their troubles with dedicated, conscious commitment and work. Shortcuts rarely work. As always, though, there are those cases that are the exception to the rule. A truly bipolar personality needs meds and hard work. This is covered in detail in the Rant on Prescription Drugs section and throughout the various discussions on the role of meds. If you or someone you know or love has developed any dependence on empathogens, here are strategies from breaking it. Stop taking it. There are no withdrawal risks or issues, and it is completely safe to cease taking it abruptly. If you try total abstinence through willpower and fail, try a gradated titration. Reduce frequency of use by 1/3. 3 times per week or month becomes 1 time. The titration process is gradual and formulated by 50% titration amounts every 1 to 2 weeks. Every 1 to 2 weeks, the amount and frequency is reduced by 1/2 until total abstinence is achieved. Quantity of dose should also be reduced on future rolling episodes. However, you will not be able to titrate dose amount. Once you are on the drug, your commitment and sensibility will evaporate entirely. You will feel impervious and immune to any consequences of using more, and the concept of regulating it sensibly will seem ridiculous and trivial. The only way to have a chance at quantity regulation is to not have access to any amount above the decided upon dose. If you agree to keep it down to a 40 milligram dose night, no matter what, then you better not have access to any more in any way. I do not support or have any confidence whatsoever in the empathogen dose titration. Schedule some sort of reward for each milestone. Each successful episode of titration frequency should be rewarded. Shopping trip, celebratory dinner. I had a client who received a new piece of equipment for his techno music production. He was quite serious as a DJ and producer, and his desire for more equipment was powerful enough to truly motivate him. Mom and Dad were more than happy to assist him financially to acquire new equipment if he was drug-free. He tested every week to prove he was clean. He also surrendered his weekly paycheck for safekeeping during a 4-month process of titration. Replace or compensate the quasi-psychedelic experience with other forms of mental, intellectual, philosophical, mystical, or creative exposure. The surreal character of the rolling experience triggers introspective thinking, feeling, and evaluating. Empathogens activate broader perceptions, causing everyday experiences to come under the lens of philosophical view. The mind and spirit crave feelings of profundity and significance, which empathogens mimic. If we provide sustenance to the meaning-seeking part of our spirit and mind, the desire for the empathogen will displace and wane. Expose yourself to material or experiences that resonate or stimulate this portion of your thinking. Read, study, and watch films that have more insightful and explorative themes or are more creative in style and presentation. Most communities have discussion groups or think tanks that meet with specific themes, and this should be considered. Living in LA, I was fortunate enough to find a chapter of the Theosophical Society that met bi-monthly and had very entertaining and stimulating group discussion meetings. I am not, nor did I become a Theosophist, nor was there any pressure to do so. I attended and enjoyed this group of educated, well-read, and diverse people conversing about meaningful things in a casual and informal way. The meetings were held in this very cool, old, deco-style building downtown LA, which added to it. Afterward, I placed an ad on Craigslist. Like-minded people looking for stimulating conversation about meaning of life, culture, global society, environment, or anything other than the mundane rigmarole of daily life. I quickly had a group of 4 to 7 people come by for coffee and conversation every 2 weeks. This went on for 8 months before I dissolved it. I picked a fresh topic for each meeting, and each meeting took on a life of its own. If you can't find a group, you can start one. In my suburban community, many people were starved for something unusual and smart. I cannot put enough emphasis on this for the quasi-psychedelic user. The subconscious or even conscious need for mental challenge and stimuli is what makes these drugs attractive. Get stimulated in a safer, albeit not as exciting way. Surrender resources to attain drugs, money, contacts. Surrender paraphernalia, in this case the little lights and little other fun toys during a roll. Be grounded, no going out all night or lack of accountability or activities. Take high potency vitamin supplements. Multis high in B complexes and GABA. Get exercise. Motion and outdoor exposure will ease tension and relax the body and mind, strengthening coping mechanisms. Eat when hungry, rest when tired. Simple. There's no secret formula for managing empathogen dependence. When the listed strategies are adhered to, success will be achieved. Everyone, not just rollers, could install these practices into their lives. Empathogens seem harmless, but they're not. Every foreign chemical is a toxin to our physiology, brain, neurons, and spirit.